Yes, we sure can. So Matt Degner, superintendent, we'll go around, do an introduction. I'll kind of give you guys an outline and then turn it over to Chase with a few more pleasantries at the beginning. So,
Chase Raymond, Deputy Superintendent.
Michelin Go, board member.
Eliza Proctor, Executive Director of Elementary Schools.
Brady Scott, President of the Teachers Association.
Jane Finch, board member.
Charlie Easton, board member.
Paula Abraham, board member.
Rufina Malone, board member.
Sean Eisner, board member.
Lucas Patajic, Executive Director of Secondary Schools.
Scott Colberg, Newman Munson Architects.
Dave Zarodnik with Newman Munson Architects.
And Sally Obernolte with Newman Munson.
Amy Erickson, Recreation Superintendent for the City of Coralville.
Kelly Hayworth with City of Coralville.
And I'm Kim Colvin, Board Secretary.
then can we get these guys here too?
BJ Mayer, Athletic Director at Iowa City West.
Dwayne Van Hemert, retired.
I love that.
Emeritus.
Emeritus.
We are the emeritus.
Kurt Pratt, Chief Operating Officer.
Adam Curtis, Chief Financial Officer.
All right, thanks for that, everybody. So this evening for our work session, we have two agenda items. One, we don't really anticipate getting to, kind of the more we've talked about, probably the conversation that'll happen here with the natatorium, but we have the City of Coralville and Newman Munson with us, and so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that project and making sure that questions you have we either get addressed or can make some notes to come back and answer those for you. The second item is financing FMP 2.2, and so we don't have FMP 2.2 to put in front of you until the next meeting, but there was a couple questions about how are we paying for it and how do we finance the FMP, and so that'll be a presentation likely delivered during our regular meeting tonight, along with that adequacy study. Those are the two big presentation items. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chase to do some further introductions, and then we'll get rolling.
Thanks, Matt. As Superintendent alluded to, we're here to talk about the partnership project with the City of Coralville. City of Coralville has been a great partner to the district on many different things for a long time, and so we're really happy we've been able to work with Kelly and Amy. And Sherry Proud, you probably know that name, has been instrumental in this work, but she couldn't be here this evening. And if you've checked out the slides, you've seen that the natatorium project has been something that's been in progress actually for a long time. But we're really happy to have this opportunity tonight to bring the entire team to meet with the board. We met one at a time, I think, about last summer, but it was just the district team. So we're really happy to have our partners from Coralville and then obviously the team from Newman Munson. And they're going to walk us through the slide deck tonight, and then we're happy to answer some questions and have some additional conversation about the project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
And just before we get started, I just, on behalf of the City of Coralville, wanted to thank you too for the long-time partnership with the school district. We have had a great relationship for a long time, and a lot of fun things and good things that are happening with the students. And this project started back in the 1987, I believe, is when we first partnered on this project back then. And it has been a great partnership since then. And in the planning process for this project, it took us about 5 minutes to decide that this was the exact location that we wanted to keep our new recreation and pool facility, because it's been such a great location with the junior high, Kirkwood Elementary close behind that, and then Coralville Central in the heart of our community. And we get a lot of kids at the recreation center before and after school, and it is really fun to see them learning and having a good time and some of the programming that we can do. But just wanted to thank you. As was said, we have a lot of partnerships, and before and after school is another example, and we enjoy that, and we think our community is benefiting from the joint partnerships that we're doing.
Thanks, Kelly. Well, one of the things we want to point out, and I guess we can go to the next slide, this was not developed in a vacuum. We had a core team that had both Chase and Lucas and Kelly, Sherry and Amy were all part of, and BJ, all a part of just many meetings. I think we had over 26 different meetings throughout that process, trying to get to all of this. And then we also had an extended team that reached out into the community and really dove into what was wanted from both the recreation aquatics and the competition aquatic side, in addition to all of the rec needs within just the center itself, as we're looking to reimagine this. So we had a very lengthy engagement process that, if you move on to the next slide there, kind of started with some benchmarking tours where we went out to just see what else was out there, or what are the other, what are your competitions, if you will, for what do they have for facilities. And we were out in Des Moines, we went up to Linn-Mar, we visited several different, even the University of Iowa facility here. We did both benchmarking for the Rec Center and for the natatorium and the competition pools. We had two different groups kind of looking at it together. And then we sent out surveys, both to the rec staff, out to the Coralville community at large, and to just basically looking at your competition pool needs and the district, the users of that competition pool. And those were very well received. I think we had 970 some from just the community alone that were resoundingly wanted a better pool. That was the number one thing that they were asking for. After we did that, we got together that large group of people that you saw on that first slide. We had a visioning session happen at your new building just over there on the ACT campus, where everybody did a little bit of dreaming, got their ideas out on the table on what their wants and needs were. Took all that information, had a great day doing that. Sherry provided some great treats for everybody that was there, and came back, and we had two different kind of parallel paths of programming work sessions with some members of that extended team as well as the core team, looking both at rec needs and looking at pool needs, so that we could kind of, as you see down in the lower corner there, when we start talking about just the pool programming work session, what are different options and layouts, and what are the needs of the pools? It kind of came to a head in terms of needing the competition pool, but also needing that warm up and cool down pool, and how does that marry, and how much can we afford, and what can we get to? So it was not an easy exercise, constantly going back and forth with different designs and things. After we kind of came to roughly an idea of where we thought we could be budgetary-wise, we put that down into programming and planning puzzle pieces, met with that large group again, and allowed everybody an opportunity to kind of play architect and lay out their versions in small groups of how they wanted to see this all come together. And what was great about that planning session was that it allowed everybody to have conversations about what they wanted to be by and how they were going to use the facilities, how they would imagine those facilities. And we were just kind of like flies on the wall, buzzing around to every single table and listening to everything people were saying, wanting, and needing. And they had an opportunity to kind of present back and talk about things. We took all that information back to our office, and that's when we really had to dig in and develop some concepts. Our charge was to develop a concept that made use of the existing facility and an addition, and to develop how a concept might come together as a total brand new facility and move forward with two parallel projects as a concept design, if you will. So that was kind of completed around the May and April timeframe of last year. We were able to come to a concept design where we had a new facility that kind of added on, or an additional facility that kind of added on to the existing facility. Obviously, there's some real challenges there in keeping the programming going while you're remodeling the existing. That was really going to be one of the biggest challenges of that scheme. We did come up with a total brand new facility that's built just a little bit off to the east side of the existing building, allowing the entire programming to continue to remain as it is during construction. Now there's going to be some problems with parking, there's going to be problems with all kinds of other things like that, but you don't have to shut down the pool and try to like move everybody to Mercer for a little while or something like that. So that became very much a very good opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, so it was a public open house then, last spring. I think it was last June is the date on there where it was a public open house to review both those concepts, and they could leave comment and everything to review. So from there, basically took a look at all of that information, and on the next slide, that's when it was reviewed with the city council. And there was basically a whole report, maybe you guys have seen that or have had access to it, but there was a whole report put together and the costs and everything like that too. And then moving forward from the city council meeting, it seemed like everyone was mostly in favor for the new build. And so that's what's been looked at since then.
And the new build came in at a slightly lower cost, and we kind of gave cost ranges. We had reached out to 3 different contractors in the community that are all willing to kind of give pricing along the way, so we kind of balanced all of their cost estimates to kind of get there. And that cost range for the new build became a little bit lower. Without escalation costs factored in at $24, that was somewhere between the $50 to $55 million range. So as we moved on from that, this is that concept. You can see it's almost directly south of the middle school with a large parking lot off onto the west. We're looking at the site plan there on the very first sheet. On the east side is, that elevation because of the grade is up about half a story and allows for a drop off and pickup with a little bit of parking right there. Then you have a nice, not much disruption of the rest of the park to the south. It kind of allowed that ball field is still there to remain. It's being relocated now, so you're going to have a much nicer lawn and a presence for the building. If you look at the floor plans, which is the middle slide, up to the north is the natatorium area. You can see kind of the pools and those things in that larger block on the north side. And then the central is kind of a two-story spine, if you will, that kind of breaks the two parts together, acts as like a nice little central thoroughfare between the two parking lots. There is on the south the 3 basketball courts, a turf field, some racquetball courts, and some community areas that kind of move out onto the park there. So that's kind of high-level overview of the way the plan lays out. The second floor has a running track around the whole court area. There's some studios up there, and then kind of a cardio workout area that looks down through glass onto the pool area below, and then also down on the courts. So that's kind of a high level of how the whole thing lays out. And then if we take a look next at just what cost came in at, we said it was somewhere between 50 and 55 million. When we started looking at this again, we reached back out to the contractors and asked what has happened last year and what would you predict if we build this in about 2 years. So they asked us to add about 5% each year in escalation to that. So we're thinking of possibly a 2027 build. So that takes the cost up to more like about $58 million. If we break out some of the things that are in that spreadsheet you can't read off to the side there, hard construction cost was about 52 million of that. There was site development costs that were actually hard budgeted was $2.8 million, but by the time you add construction contingency, a design contingency, and the escalation on that, it brings it up to 3.5 million. And then there's the soft costs. So that site development cost is actually like parking lots, all the grading, bringing utilities in, those types of things, and demo of the existing building. And then the soft costs would be like all of the design fees, all of the ground testing, civil work that has to do with site surveying and all that kind of stuff. So that came in at about 6.5 million. So then we take a look at how we might take all of this money and part it out so that it's fair to what your uses might be of the facility, and parallel that as an allocation to what costs might be. And that next slide starts to get into some of those. I wish the numbers were a little bit bigger, but it's hard to kind of get it all on the same slide. What we did is try to come up with a little bit of a color coding if you look at the floor plan there. The darkest blue is kind of allocated 100% use to the school district. And in that darkest blue, we have things like a storage room, then right below that storage room was a wet classroom, and then we had 2 locker rooms. So that was the only area, and then a little coach's room that is also accessed off of the dry area and the wet area. That's that small box down there. You go to the next shade of blue, which is the lightest blue, and that's 15% use allocation. And that's kind of the lap pool that is on the rec side. There is a glass wall that divides the competition pool from the, oh, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong thing. I should have went to the 90%. Yep. So in the competition pool, there is the medium colored blue. And that is the competition pool itself and the viewing area, which is up, elevated about 1.5 stories above, so it has a good enough rake on it so you can actually see down into the first lane as people are doing the competition there. Then we go to that lighter blue, and between the light blue and the medium colored blue, there's a glass wall because we're going to have different temperature environments and noise issues and things like that, so that glass wall would separate those 2 spaces. But that would be used primarily by the rec side for their lap swims and those kind of things, but still would be available for warm-ups and cool-downs at meets, and also at times for practices. And I know Sherry and Amy have worked with BJ and everybody else on what times they want pool. They have a whole spreadsheet that shows that out, and that's how we kind of got to these numbers of allocation of water time that's available. Then the only other color that's on there is the pink color, and that's the mechanical room that runs the pools. So to kind of get to that, we took a look at water surface area by usage and tried to see how much is allocated to the school's usage and how much is allocated to the rec usage. It came up to more like about 45% to the school side, about 55% to, so we We took a look at every one of those square footages and then allocated your percentage of use to the square footage that it's taking up, multiplied that times what it's costing per square foot to build that, and it was estimated at about the $430 a square foot for the wet areas that we're talking about here. Then we applied the 12% design contingency, what do we have, a 10% escalation contingency, the 5% and 5%, and then the 4% construction contingency, which we would want to carry on into construction for things that come up at the time. That came up just a little over $11 million, almost $12 million actually. We did the same thing with the site development costs. That was the $2.8 million that got escalated up. And when we took a look at that, all the allocated square footages by use for the school district, it came up to 21,752 square feet, which is right at about 20% of the entire building square footage. So we're allocating things like all that site development cost, 20% of that cost to the school district, and then doing the same thing with the soft cost for all the design work, the civils, and all that kind of stuff to the school district. And all of that tallied up comes to about $14,500,000. No,
Yeah, 14.
14 million.
14 million.
Yeah. 500.
Yeah.
So if you think the uses are different, we have it all in a spreadsheet. We can change that all out. But that was kind of the way we were trying to think of what's the fairest way to kind of come up with what the cost would be, is to go by use. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of other areas in the building that will be used by the kids during swim meets and things like that, but they're a part of the community as well, and that's who the rec center is for.
So when we came last summer, we only had some rough numbers for you, kind of based on an upper percentage of where we thought, you know, we weren't going to use the rec space necessarily, but we're going to use the pool. And so we kind of gave a rough view. We really like this view because, like the team said, Sherry did a lot of work working with BJ and our team about, okay, let's look at exactly how we're using the water right now and see if we can really kind of drill down on that. This probably gives us more pool time than we're actually getting right now. There's a second basin of water, which means you can use both of them at the same time. The ability for us to do some other things that we haven't done. Once upon a time in the school district, right, we had, Lucas, were you still at Northwest when they did swimming at the middle school?
Yeah.
And so, and I bring up that example. I'm not saying we're bringing back swimming at the middle school. That's not what I'm saying. But with the dedicated space of 90% of the time for the school district, if we want to do things like water safety for younger students, right? We know that swimming is not just a nice to have; it is a needed safety skill for kids. There would be more opportunities to do that. Not that the city of Coralville wouldn't partner with us in the past. There just wasn't space to do those things. And so as we look at how this has been designed and we look at the application of who's going to use which square footage, we really believe this is a nice representation and provides the district good value for what we are contributing to the project in terms of how they break that spaces down and then our access to those spaces as well. Because again, that just doesn't mean 90% of the time during swim season. That means 90% of the time the competition pool would be dedicated to the school district. So that's a significant amount of time throughout a year that we really hadn't been utilizing the water as it currently sits under the agreement. What Dave was saying there at the end, the other piece that accompanies this is a 28E agreement. We don't have the details of a 28E. Amy and Kelly and Sherry have had some brief conversations about what does that look like in terms of other uses, but those are still pieces that we would want to work out in terms of what our annual contribution is to the upkeep. Of course, this is just construction. We would still have to be a good partner in paying some of that cost to upkeep the pool as we do right now. We don't have that piece worked out for you tonight. This is simply about the construction share for the new facility.
I think I might have mentioned at the beginning, but part of the reason we wanted to bring this to you tonight is because obviously when we ask you to consider an updated FMP here at the end of the month or in June, this will be a significant line item that we would present to you as a recommendation in that FMP. And so we wanted to make sure you got your questions answered, or you saw some of the reasoning behind the number that would be in that second facility master plan update that we would provide to you. So we hadn't visited on this topic in a while, but there's been a couple pieces like that. We talked about fine arts here a few weeks ago, that there would be a line item around those projects in there. And then of course, this will have a placeholder as well, so.
I'm kind of particularly interested in impact on students, for those of you who participate in aquatic sports and competitions and recreation. So can you, yourself, or you ask other members of the team, it's a really impressive team here. Really pleased that you're working on it. Can you talk about what students at West and Liberty have now in terms of aquatic opportunities? What this changes, what this plan changes, and how we're doing in keeping competition opportunities between West and Liberty City and comparable.
Sure, so I'll kind of kick it off from the beginning, from the historical perspective. Probably, part of the reason we entered some of this conversation, of course, and we're excited about it with the city of Coralville, is when we built Liberty High School, the goal with Liberty High School was for, that school to have all of its own independent competition teams for athletics, to have all of its own band groups, fine arts activities, all of those. And swimming is probably the one place we haven't been able to do that yet to this point, that we still have a joint swim team with West and Liberty. And part of that's just to do with pool space. Really, Coralville was the partner that stepped forward and said that they were willing to look at additional pool space in the community. We've had those conversations with North Liberty, but it doesn't seem like anything's moving forward there. We've kind of thrown some numbers at you before about what it would cost the district to build a pool facility, and that would be a much higher price tag than what's presented here to you tonight. But Charlie, if you're asking about kind of specific numbers of kids in those activities, I'll probably have to rely on some of the team for help. But we have so we have that joint swim team, and then you think about our 2 junior highs, right? And that they're also participating in that. So
They sent the numbers last fall, and I looked it up. It was 241 students for last year. It's in our old emails. This is an email from August 26th. They break it down by schools. But 241 total students that are on the swim teams.
For West and Liberty.
West and Liberty in their middle schools.
So the way the numbers broke down was we had just under 90, we had just under 90 kids that were swimming on the joint Liberty and West high school team. But then we had between the two middle schools about 150, if we're looking at the same numbers, Mitch. And so we saw this 50% drop off between our two individual middle school programs going up to the combined high school program. Brent's not here from Liberty, but one of the things we've heard is that they have seen less interest, especially at Liberty, because of some of the reduced level opportunity for people to actually compete. With only one team, there's less varsity spots, and so we would expect, with having the two separate teams, more water time, that the numbers at the high schools actually will expand that opportunity that students have. Charlie, I mean, obviously we always have drop off in all our programs from the middle schools to the high schools, but a 50% drop off is pretty significant across our programs.
So you don't see that from Southeast to City?
I have the city high numbers, and we just collected them, but we don't have the Southeast numbers. And the city high team this year,
we got 30 girls, 25 boys.
Is 55. About the same size. So the city, or about 2/3 the size, I guess, about 55, and in the combined City West Liberty team was about 85. So it's about 2 big size. And that's also right a competition piece. We hear that from our friends at City High is timeout. You have this super team where you've let two of your high schools combine and swim competitively with each other. We don't get an opportunity over here, so it's our kids versus everybody else's. And so there's also that competition factor when we looked at that equity in terms of competitiveness when you bring City into the mix too, because of of how we've done that. And so I think there are a number of different pieces when we look at those opportunities for students. That some are obvious in the numbers, I think others aren't so obvious in the numbers.
Just wonder if we, as we go along here, that we try to clarify the picture from the standpoint of students who are competing now and who are not competing now when they want to, and how this expenditure and this great facilities concept would affect their interests.
My only question, or my major question here is the 90%. Oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
No worries.
Yeah,
She's just trying. Go ahead.
I can't see you. Just where the 90% allocation came from, because I don't know how we get 90% of usage out of, the swim seasons are how long?
I've got that here. So in the second week of August, the West High and Liberty girls would begin practicing, and the seasons go through mid-February.
With the boy, up to the boys.
With the boys, yes, sorry. And then somewhere in July is when the teams start practicing a bit before the season starts.
Where do we get, like, are we going to be using it 90% of the time? If
So-
we're paying for 90% of the allocation.
May I answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just,
So what you see in picture number 5 is what the city of Coralville needs or wants for lap swimming. What picture number 7 is, although I think the athletic directors would prefer that to be even bigger, to even take on even more number of swimmers that can swim at one time, that is really the competition pool. We requested 10% of that space at the time frame of like when it's really not competition season, that we might be able to extend some lessons over there. Our big lesson time is in the summer, and there's not really a lot of athletic, besides probably maybe a swim camp or something going on.
Mainly for the diving
Yeah.
area, because that's where the diving will be.
And one thing I don't know that we really stressed is how the lanes can go both ways, in terms of the number of kids that can practice. So I think that.
Yeah, the pool in number 5 is not a deep pool. It goes from 6 foot to 5 foot. That's one of the cost savings things. And it's really primarily lap swim and will be more on the cool down. The pool number 7 there does have 2 diving boards and has the deep outside. So that would be what Coralville Rec would need it for if they're ever doing any deep water type things for recreation.
And diving is in the girls' swimming.
And I know originally, like last spring, when we looked at a plan that was going to have 2 separate competition pools. One would be for Liberty, one would be for West. I'm just trying to figure out how this is going to be divvied up for practice time. Will one be practicing in 5 and the other one in 7, or are they going to have to kind of schedule around each other?
They will be still scheduling around each other with the allotment of the budget that was presented from the school district is how we got to number 7 versus 5 would be used for warm-ups before meets and things like that, possibly some morning swim times before school. But it's not covered in the, yeah. That was the hope, was to have 2 bodies of water so Liberty and West could practice at the same time.
Because I guess this kind of puts us in the same situation that we're already in right now, right? With just one competition pool.
It's much bigger, and you're going to have a lot
Okay.
more room for spectators and the teams on the pool deck.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that our pool is not going to be lasting a whole lot longer. We're at a point of, we'll be going on 40 years by the time that this project gets started. So we may not have a pool moving forward if we don't make a decision about what to do with this. Yeah.
And then in terms of, we talked about maintenance and upkeep, what about operational costs? Will the district be responsible for any operational costs?
We will, that's the 28, that's
okay.
the ongoing
So
28.
Is that something that would come out of the general fund?
Adam, where do we pay that, 28 through?
We pay that out of couple.
And then, does the city of Coralville, do do you have the funds already set aside for your portion of this project?
No, we will have to go to a vote of the public for our portion of the funds, and the council is just waiting for this decision and then is prepared to move forward on our end.
And then what happens if the project ends up, because we all know that there's a lot of uncertainty about building materials and, you know, the atmosphere right now. If the costs go over, what our estimates are?
Well, that's something obviously that we would have to face. One of the things that we are looking at is going construction manager at risk, so that we know what the fixed price will be when we start the project, and then the contractors themselves would be responsible if the bids, individual bids didn't come in correctly.
We can only do that as a school district.
No, we can't now.
You can.
We can now.
Yeah,
We weren't
It's
able to
open
for a long time. They just made that code change, I think, last year, or 18 months ago.
Yeah, it was last year.
Yeah.
So, can I ask the administration, how would that work with the different schools sharing that space and the scheduling? Is that going to be a problem, or we have an athletic director here, I don't know.
Do you want to speak to it, BJ?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we let BJ talk to it. I think part of it too with the scheduling around it versus the current pool, right? Remember, with one team, there's only so many students they can take, so even with the scheduling around it, I think we'll be serving more kids, even with the scheduling different times too. That's what I would have added the first time you asked that, Jane, but we'll let BJ talk about kind of what they've talked about scheduling. Scheduling it, practices,
Yeah,
how you would envision doing that.
So, I don't have a great plan right off the bat, but lots of our teams go early and late. We will also be working with both junior highs so that they can get time right after school. Typically, our West and Liberty teams currently will go at like 5:30, 6 o'clock so that the junior highs can come right after school, walk across the street, or be bused from North Central so that they can have their time to swim. We work around meets. We can schedule when West is going to be at home, then Liberty can be on the road. That's easily done. And what I would say is what we do with a lot of our gym teams is one team goes early one week and then later the next week and stuff like that, so that they're getting equal time at the probably the prime time spot and or later or in the morning as well. So I think there's a lot of flexibility. From what I know about the swim community, they go really early in the morning a lot of times, they go really late at night. It just depends on when they have access to the pool as well. And we can be very flexible with that moving forward.
And I like how you pointed out how it's the location right across the street from the middle school. I wish all of our middle schools had something like this right across the street. That'd be wonderful. So the competition pool during the school day is, you talked about water safety instruction, which I'm all in support of. I saved a 12-year-old this summer in City Park Pool swimming laps there. So I wish all of our students had some basic swimming instruction and water safety. So are we thinking about doing some of that during the school day and utilizing that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably short on specific plans for that yet, Director Finch, but I definitely think that's something we'd like to do and pursue. I think, Chase did a nice job of talking about it. You've done a nice job of advocating for that before too, that we know that's kind of a life skill our kids need now, and that's it's a hole where we don't address much of that in our curriculum. And so I think, of course, we'd want to work with the city of Coralville to see what we can schedule, and then do, look for some pilot opportunities and how we could do some elementary, get some elementary schools there with some close proximity, and then build from there. Yeah.
We learned a lot about that at the Linmar facility too.
Do you want to expand on that?
I don't remember what grade level that was.
It was 4.
I think they do. Most elementary students get over to the pool once a week, so that they're in there. It's kind of like swimming lessons, but it's more just being fun a little bit as well. And it's from their PE department, I think. They bus them all of the time over there.
I think they started with a grade and then added a grade,
Correct.
to just kind of build on it.
Yeah.
And their water's
Yeah.
deep, so they couldn't start very young. Yeah.
Could you maybe talk a little bit more about what you said about the Corville pool. Nearly, will we be 40 years old soon?
Yeah.
And you said.
We're hanging on.
As an actual indicator risk that we won't have a pool
Do you
in
want to
the
talk about
relatively near future. Is that fair?
Water's Edge community?
Yeah, well, the pool consultant we have on this is Water's Edge. And they came in and kind of did an assessment of the pool, because our first thought was, well, what can we do to kind of keep using this pool? How much do we have to do? After they went through all the guts that are down below, underneath there, looked at all the piping, looked at everything. But like any plan you look at, we're filling that pool in, because they did not want to revamp that pool. There was issues with some of the concrete, there was issues with the piping. They said it's gonna be way more expensive just to try to bring that pool up, and it didn't have enough deck space. There's a lot of things that it's just deficient on in its design that isn't up to current standards. That any plan where we looked at doing addition to the existing wasn't gonna make use of the existing pool. So,
Matt, if we don't have the Corville pool, does that mean all of our kids would have to use Iowa City recreation facilities?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Charlie, because that was actually something we were going to probably just have to kind of connect the dots on, I think, a little bit is, I mean, if we weren't to have access to this one, I mean, we would be having to probably rework some things and bring you back a plan to build something, right? I mean, because we don't have enough access, there's just not enough access in the community to say, we're going to take advantage of what the city of Iowa City has or what's existing in North Liberty. I mean, we just wouldn't have sufficient space to
Not
do
even with
that.
the University of Iowa's big pool, they're not.
No, we get no time. Yeah. Yeah.
Getting the flash.
We explored that one right away with Liberty when we were doing the transition to Liberty, about trying to get some pool time there in a committed fashion. It just wasn't viable, continues to not be viable for us. So we'd be in a spot. We would have to do something different with our resources, which wouldn't be impossible, but it would just probably displace some other priorities that you have in the FMP, right? I mean, it's
Well, it would be significantly more expensive.
Right.
If we were gonna build a standalone pool, 21, 24,
probably somewhere 24, 25 million, and you have all the operating costs.
so trying to own and operate ourselves is a much more expensive proposition than continuing a partnership with.
And even if we built our own pool, would all of our students be able to use that, or would we still have to have an agreement with like Iowa City to allow for that usage, like at Mercer and Rec Center? Because I would imagine that we're not building like 2 competition pools where all of our kids could practice. I mean, we would put everybody.
Yeah, I think we'd want to.
Yeah,
There's probably a few ideas you could
Yeah.
pursue with that, right? I mean, we'd probably want to talk about that. Is that something you build to serve all 3 of your feeder programs? You build some kind of a universal facility that way? Do you just build it for 2 of the 3? Is there another partnership opportunity you'd want to explore? We don't like any of those, obviously. That's why, we brought you this one, because we don't really want to be in the business of owning and operating pools. When you ask any other district about their experience with that, it's incredibly expensive. Just, again, whenever the life cycle of this pool is extinct too, to get into then needing to build or replace and redo that, it's an expensive proposition.
Kelly, can you talk more about, you had mentioned that Coralville would need to go for a vote, and you're waiting on our decision, our formal vote, or?
Yeah, I mean, we need to see, because obviously we would not build a competition pool. We do not, that's not what we need. And so what the makeup of the project would change if the school district were to decide something different. So that's why I said we really need to hear what you all want to do, and then we would go with the rest of the project.
I'll knock on wood for you for this. Let's say you go back and we've committed and it gets voted down. Do you go to another vote later on it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we would have to look at. I think one of the things we've been very excited about from the beginning of this planning process is we have had everybody from young to senior citizens giving us input and involved in this project. And we have senior citizens that do lap swimming and all those kinds of activities and other water aerobics, those kinds of things.
And our indoor track, right now, we don't have a track. Our fitness room, it looks like a hotel fitness room. So there's a lot of things that we are putting in our master plan that the community is very excited about. Beyond the pool, upgrading our pool, our indoor track is by far the most popular thing coming out of the master plan.
And not that it really moves the needle one way or the other. One of the things I also think is, especially when you look at those surveys, and they called them community surveys as opposed to competition, right? But everybody in the city of Coralville is a member of the Iowa City Community School District. And so it truly is a joint sense of it, not just from the competition, but also that community supporting people that are invested in our school system. And so it kind of is, you're getting it on both sides, the partnership, but also all those community members have their kids in our school, and so they see that benefit through the work the city's doing, but then also what we're doing inside the school district as well.
And not to vary conversation, but just looking at the clock, and we still have one other item to discuss. Oh,
Super.
We're going to take that.
Yeah, we can
Oh,
take
okay,
that
I
one
missed
during the
that.
regular
Never
meeting,
mind.
President Malone. Sure.
Or
just-
what are you looking for us tonight?
Well, just to kind of channel what Kelly had talked about here, right? They're going to need to know if this is not something we're interested in pursuing. I think, to date, they wouldn't have a reason to believe we're not, right? I mean, we partnered with them from the planning stages to the onset to presenting this here to you today. Again, I anticipate asking you guys for a vote on an updated FMP in June. We're hoping that we can give you a version, a more complete version here at the second meeting in May, so that you can vote on it potentially that first meeting in June is kind of the rough timeline we're working with. If that doesn't work, then for sure the second meeting in June, we'd ask you for it. They want to know, that probably would be a formal sign of commitment about here's the projects, again, we're agreeing to in that second facility master plan and how we're directing the admin team to commit, those funds and move work forward. So that would be the most formal sign of it. I think if there was significant skepticism, it'd be fair to kind of share that with them here this evening too, so they'd be probably tuned into that vote or understanding if there's more questions or feedback, that we could work through prior to that vote as well.
I just know that it's been talked about for 8 years now of Liberty being open, of the two schools competing together and how inequitable that is. But the thing that has stopped it from being split before now was inability to have the space to actually do anything. And so if, I'm going to take the words of the folks that have been part of this whole project, that that's going to be solved by this, I think it's the right way to go, because they need to split the schools into their own teams. This has been the thing that has stopped it up to this point, so if this is going to solve that, I'd be all for it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I just want to know for sure that this is, with one competition school, that this really is going to solve the problem, so.
I think it is. I mean, based on the research we've done and based on talking to the swim coaches and talking to the ADs, I mean, quite honestly, Jane, if they wanted to, the two teams could swim at the same time. When we talk about space, right? The pool is larger. We know what the numbers are. Maybe not every day, but then it just gets the competitive streak of whether or not they want to have two teams in the water. But yes, we believe that this will. And BJ talked about scheduling Liberty away when West is at home. We actually don't have to do that because of the partnership and the ability to use the lap pool. That's why we have that percentage of the lap pool, so that on days, even when there is a meet, whether it's the junior high team so they don't miss practice, or Liberty when West is at a swim meet, can use that other side of the facility. So if we don't have enough space, it's a really good problem to have, because it means our swim program is just exploded off the charts. But this should give us enough water for all four teams.
So how many more lanes is this new pool compared to the one that we have right now?
That's what I was going to ask. Is there a way we could give them like a comparison of what we're working with now in comparison to what this new space would provide?
Currently, you have what, an 8-lane pool?
Yes.
This is a 10-lane pool, and they're wider lanes. So they have a little bit more working room there. Right, currently, you have very limited deck space, so there's no spots for the teams to be around the sides, and there's no good viewing. Where this has plenty of space back by the locker rooms for all the teams to be hanging out, plus a lot of deck space around the sides, and nice angled viewing. If you've ever been to Linmar's facility, they have a very nice one with the viewing platform up there. That's kind of what this is modeled after.
Are we currently hosting meets at the?
Yes.
We can't do like a conference meet, it's just too many bodies.
Dual?
Yeah, dual or tri more so in the middle school side of things.
So would that be something else we'd be looking at, is having larger?
Absolutely. Yes.
How would the revenue get split out of those kind of events from ticket sales?
That's,
All of us.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys feel that the 90% is fair?
Yeah, because I think the kind of the point that didn't get buttoned up is they wouldn't build that if it's not us, right? And so I do think that's our share, that's a fair share of that. Otherwise, I mean, that pool doesn't exist. I mean, they probably move forward with a plan that includes a much smaller lap pool, to serve community use. And so that pool is kind of designed and in the plans because of our interest in it and what the need for our swim team is. So
I just think there's other opportunities that we haven't really thought of yet. We've talked about swim lessons, but right, water polo is a growing sport. There's but we don't have space, right? I could see in the off season, to Charlie's point,
Enough things to deal with.
I love the pool. That's why maybe they said over there. But to Charlie's point about more opportunities, there are other things that we can do in the pool than just have a competitive swim team, whether it is water polo or synchronized swimming, or there are a lot of different opportunities that we just don't have the pool space for right now, or the time that we could look. And so I do think there is some things that we can start to explore to use it more.
And just a question about the diving boards, as a community, will they have access to those diving boards? And if they don't have access, are they going to have a problem with that?
so, because of the deep well costing so much more money, we opted to not do diving boards, but we do have, when you get into our higher levels of lessons, like level 6 and so forth, you do use a diving board. So that's kind of why we put in the 10% use over there is for those purposes. And then the same reason why we want the school district can use our lap lanes for 15% of the time in terms of like mentioning when it's a meet night or for warm-ups and that kind of thing too. So it wouldn't be on a regular basis. The other thing that just dawned on me as everyone was talking is Sherry did bring up the fact that like you could also look at renting pool number 7 to groups like such as I don't want to name off, but there's different clubs that are looking for water. So it could be something to offset possibly some of your costs that could, potentially you could rent that space for. That would probably have to be something that we'd all work together on, because there's going to have to be people that are in our building when the school district is not necessarily in there. But there's a lot of different things that could be maybe created, yeah.
Could rent it to Chase's Club Water Polo.
Exactly. I'm going to have sign-ups. I'm getting excited.
Yeah.
He's just still reeling from the 50-yard dash.
He wants to get in the water.
Board
Yes, I
members,
do.
are there any major concerns that would,
I just want to say, I'm really in favor of this plan. It's a long time coming. I mean, I remember I was still working at West for quite a few of those years when we shared a team with Liberty. And I like the fact that it's a little smaller, not two competition pools, and some of the things that we talked about in that original planning session. I like that because I think we can make this work, but it's a little bit scaled down, so we're not doing the Cadillac version. And I think it's a good project. I think we need to. Time has come to do something. So I'm very much in favor of it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We do have something that's set up of what the schedule of practices would look like, but it's something that Sherry worked on, and we got some school district feedback on, but we weren't really feeling comfortable because we really want the school district to feel good about what we're passing out to all of you. So we have a little diagram here of how that would be plotted out, but I really feel like it needs to be a little bit more work together in order to, send that off to the board for consideration.
And just the space for parents to be able to see what's happening, because, I supervised swim meets there, you couldn't see, you couldn't see anything.
Yeah, it's standing
You
room
said-
only, and,
yeah, there was these little blue chairs, it
Yeah.
just was not good for parents to be able to watch their kids.
Yeah.
So.
I think this is a really worthwhile and well put together process. Again, I really appreciate all of your participation, and I'm quite comfortable with where we're going for
I just want to maybe then end on, I think it's, I think there's some great things we should be proud of with our community, right? I mean, this partnership with Coralville, and recently you've also approved a partnership with Mercer, and trying to find the synergy in those community spaces where our entities are working together instead of everybody doing their own separate thing, I think is part of what we're expected to do, right? Is all the different organizations and institutions in our community. So thank the city of Coralville for engaging with us that way, and for your guys' commitment to be willing to look for those opportunities, because that's what makes our community stronger. So thank you.
I was just gonna say, my last piece, and I think it's probably the last piece that everybody's gonna need, is what you're already planning on doing is how does this fit in with the rest of the FMP, right? So when we see the total package, because everything's a give and take, so like, what does it look like compared to everything else and how it fits together? Try to put aside the factors.
And with that, thank you all for coming tonight to present to us, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay, thanks.
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all got it all.